Second Chance, a revenge and rebirth story. Part 1, the end becomes the beginning. The last thing I remember from my first life was the cold concrete rushing up to meet me. My business partner, Chen, had pushed me off the rooftop of our company building, the company I'd built from nothing while he rode my coattails for 15 years. "Sorry, Claire," he'd said with that snake smile. "But the investors prefer a male CEO. And your signature on these transfer documents was surprisingly easy to forge." As I fell, my life flashed before me. Not the happy moments, those were few. Instead, I saw every warning sign I'd ignored. Every red flag I'd dismissed as paranoia. Every person who tried to tell me Marcus was using me. My best friend Sarah had warned me. My mentor Professor Williams had cautioned me. Even my assistant Jenny had tried to show me the discrepancies in the books. But I'd been too trusting. Too focused on the work. Too naive to see the knife aimed at my back. I hit the ground. Everything went black. And then I opened my eyes to my college dorm room, 20 years earlier. Part 2, Recognition and Revelation. I sat up in my narrow twin bed, heart pounding. The dingy yellow walls. The outdated laptop on my desk. The acceptance letter from the Startup Accelerator program pinned to my bulletin board. My hands were smooth, unwrinkled. When I looked in the mirror, I saw my 22-year-old face staring back at me. I'd been reborn. The date on my phone confirmed it, September 15, 2004. The day before I was supposed to meet Chen for the first time at the Accelerator program orientation. I spent the entire night making plans. This time, things would be different. What I knew. Marcus would befriend me, gain my trust, and slowly position himself as indispensable. He would introduce me to investors, who were actually his associates, designed to push me out. He would systematically steal my code, my designs, and eventually my entire company. The algorithm I'd created, the one that would revolutionize data analytics, was worth billions. What I would do differently. Document everything. Trust no one completely. Build my own network independent of Marcus. Protect my intellectual property ruthlessly. And when the time came, I would destroy him the way he destroyed me. But first, I needed allies. Real ones this time. Part 3, Building the Foundation. The next morning at orientation, I watched Chen walk into the room. He looked exactly as I remembered, handsome, charismatic, with an easy smile that made people instinctively trust him. He was already working the room, shaking hands, laughing at jokes. I'd fallen for that charm once. Never again. Instead, I turned my attention to the others. Sarah Mitchell sat in the corner, nervously fidgeting with her presentation notes. In my previous life, I'd been too busy with Marcus to really get to know her. She'd tried to warn me about him years later, but by then it was too late. This time, I approached her first. "Your pitch is about sustainable fashion supply chains, right?" I said, sitting down beside her. She looked up, surprised. "How did you know?" "I saw your company name on the roster, Greenthread. I think it's brilliant. The industry needs disruption." Her face lit up. "Really? Everyone keeps telling me it's too niche, too complicated." "They're wrong," I said firmly. "In 10 years, sustainability won't be optional, it'll be mandatory. You're ahead of the curve." I wasn't just flattering her. In my previous life, Sarah had built Greenthread into a successful company despite everyone's doubts. She was smart, ethical, and loyal. Everything Marcus wasn't. "I'm Claire Zhang," I said, extending my hand. "Data analytics and AI." "Sarah Mitchell," she replied, shaking it. "Want to grab coffee after this? I'd love to hear more about your project." "I'd like that." Across the room, Marcus was watching us. When our eyes met, he smiled and started walking over. "Here we go. Claire Zhang," he said smoothly. "I'm Chen. I was hoping to connect with you. I read about your algorithm in the accelerator applications. Revolutionary stuff. Thank you, I said coolly. Marcus, right? You're working on, what was it? Something with mobile apps? I knew exactly what he was working on. A half-baked social networking app that would fail within 6 months, right before he'd abandon it to glom onto my success. Yeah, connecting local businesses with consumers, he said, unfazed by my lukewarm response. But honestly, I think your project has way more potential. I'd love to pick your brain about it sometime. Maybe we could collaborate? I work alone, I said simply. But good luck with your app. His smile tightened slightly. Sure, of course. But if you ever need a business development perspective, I'm your guy. That's my strength. I'll keep that in mind. Sarah watched this exchange with interest. After Marcus walked away, she leaned over and whispered, "Wow. You shut that down fast." Something about him feels off, I said, which was entirely true. I got the same vibe, Sarah admitted. Too smooth, you know. I smiled. In my first life, I'd ignored my instincts. Not this time. Part 4, The Long Game. Over the next 6 months, I built my company, Data Vision Analytics, with meticulous care. But this time, I did everything differently. Strategic changes. 1. IP protection. I filed patents immediately, under my name alone, with airtight legal protections. In my previous life, I'd waited, and Marcus had filed competing patents that muddied the waters. 2. Team building. I recruited Sarah as my COO. I also brought on Professor Williams as an advisor, and Jenny Martinez, who wouldn't have graduated for another 2 years, as an intern after I specifically recruited her from campus. 3. Investor selection. I avoided every single investor Marcus had introduced me to in my previous life. Instead, I targeted female venture capitalists and ethical funds that actually cared about long-term value, not quick flips. 4. Documentation. Everything was recorded, timestamped, and backed up in multiple locations. Every meeting, every email, every conversation. Marcus, meanwhile, kept circling. His app had failed, just as I knew it would. He started showing up at industry events where he knew I'd be, always trying to chat, to get close, to offer his expertise. Claire. Great presentation today, he said at a tech conference in March. Listen, I've been thinking about pivoting my focus. Your company is doing amazing things. I'd love to come on board, maybe as VP of Business Development. I've got connections with. I'm not hiring right now, I interrupted. And when I am, I'll be looking for people with experience in data analytics specifically. I'm a fast learner, he pressed. And I know you're meeting with venture capital firms next month. I could really help prepare you for those conversations. Investors can be tricky, especially for young female founders. I appreciate the offer, but I have advisors for that. His jaw tightened. You know, Claire, I've tried to be friendly, to support your work. But you've been cold to me from day one. Did I do something to offend you? I looked him directly in the eye. No, Marcus. You haven't done anything. Yet. The word yet hung in the air between us. His expression flickered. Confusion, then something darker, before he recovered his smooth mask. Well, if you change your mind, you know where to find me. I won't. Part 5, The Trap. 2 years into my second life, Data Vision Analytics was thriving. We'd secured series of funding, hired a talented team of 30 people, and our algorithm was being adopted by Fortune 500 companies. Marcus, meanwhile, had bounced between 3 failed startups. I watched from a distance as he burned through investors' money and blamed everyone but himself for his failures. Then he made his move. I got a call from an interested investor, Gregory Walsh, representing Walsh Capital Group. He wanted to meet about a potential Series B investment. I knew this name. In my previous life, Walsh had been one of Marcus's planted associates, someone who'd helped orchestrate my downfall. Set up the meeting, I told Jenny. But I want you to run a full background check on Walsh and his firm first. Every detail. Jenny's investigation revealed what I already suspected. Walsh Capital Group was barely legitimate, with a history of hostile takeovers and asset stripping. And Marcus Chen was listed as a consultant who'd worked with them on 2 previous deals. Perfect. I went to the meeting with Sarah and my lawyer, armed with knowledge and a hidden recording device. Walsh was exactly as I remembered. Slick, predatory, wearing an expensive suit that probably cost more than my entire team's monthly salaries combined. Ms. Zhang, thank you for meeting with me, he said, shaking my hand with a grip that lasted too long. I've been following DataVision's progress with great interest. I appreciate that, Mr. Walsh. Please, call me Greg. He smiled. I'll get right to the point. We're prepared to offer $50 million for a 40% stake in your company. It's a generous valuation. In my previous life, I would have been dazzled. This time, I saw it for what it was, a lowball offer designed to give them control. That values my company at $125 million, I said flatly. Our internal valuation is $400 million, and we have 3 other firms interested at that level. Walsh's smile tightened. I think you'll find our terms more favorable than others. We move fast, and we can close within 2 weeks. Why the rush? Time is money, Ms. Zhang. And I think, given some concerning information I've learned about your company, you'll want our expertise sooner rather than later. There it was. The threat. What concerning information? Sarah asked sharply. Walsh pulled out a folder. There are questions about the origin of your core algorithm. Specifically, whether it might have been developed using code from a previous project you worked on, a project that had multiple contributors. Marcus's play. He was claiming he'd contributed to my work, that the IP was partially his. In my first life, this accusation had come later, after he was already embedded in my company. By then, the lines were blurred enough that he could make the claim stick. This time, I was ready. That's interesting, I said calmly. Because I developed this algorithm entirely independently, before I even entered the accelerator program. I have time-stamped code repositories, academic advisor verification, and patent filings that predate any collaborative work. Would you like to see them? Walsh's expression faltered slightly. Well, I'm sure we can clear up any misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, I interrupted. This is a manufactured controversy designed to tank my valuation and force me into a desperate sale. What I'm wondering is who provided you with this false information. I turned to my lawyer. David, what are the penalties for defamation and attempted fraud in a business transaction of this size? David, who I'd briefed thoroughly, didn't miss a beat. Substantial. Both civil and potentially criminal liability. And if this is part of a conspiracy with multiple parties. He let the implication hang. Walsh stood up abruptly. I think there's been a miscommunication. Perhaps we should reschedule. No need, I said pleasantly. I'm not interested in working with Walsh Capital Group. But I am interested in learning more about your consultant, Marcus Chen, and his role in this miscommunication. Expect to hear from our attorneys. We left Walsh looking pale. In the car, Sarah turned to me with wide eyes. How did you know? Instinct, I said. An experience. Part 6, Turning the Tables. I didn't just defend myself, I went on the offensive. My legal team filed a lawsuit against Walsh Capital Group for attempted fraud and defamation. During discovery, we uncovered emails between Walsh and Marcus detailing their entire scheme: create doubt about my IP, tank my company's valuation, force a distressed sale, then push me out and install Marcus as CEO. It was exactly what had happened in my first life, except this time I had proof. The tech industry press ran with the story. Female founder fights back against hostile takeover attempt. Data analytics CEO exposes investment fraud scheme. Marcus tried to disappear, but I made sure everyone knew his name and his tactics. I gave interviews. I shared the evidence publicly. I warned other founders about predators like him. Walsh Capital Group settled for an undisclosed sum, which funded our Series B internally. Marcus was blacklisted from the industry. But I wasn't satisfied with just stopping him. I wanted him to feel what I'd felt. Part 7, The Final Move. 3 years after my rebirth, Data Vision Analytics was valued at over $1 billion. We'd gone public, and I'd become one of the youngest female CEOs of a tech company in the country. Marcus, meanwhile, had been reduced to writing bitter blog posts about how the system was rigged against male entrepreneurs. Then I made my final play. I bought his failed social networking app, the one from the Accelerator program, for pennies. It was abandoned, worthless. But it had one thing I wanted. His name on the founding documents. I relaunched it as a cautionary tale, a case study in what not to do in business. I created a series of educational videos analyzing every mistake, every ethical lapse, every shortcut he'd taken. It became required viewing in business schools across the country. The Marcus Chen case study, How Unethical Practices Destroy Value. His name became synonymous with failure and fraud. One day, I got an email from him. "Claire, I don't know what I did to make you hate me so much. We barely knew each other. Why have you spent years destroying my reputation? What did I ever do to you?" I stared at the email for a long time. In this life, technically, he'd done nothing to me. He'd tried, and failed. But in another life, one he didn't remember, he'd stolen everything from me and left me to die. I wrote back. "Marcus, you're right that we barely knew each other in this timeline. But I recognized you for what you are, someone who builds nothing but takes everything. Someone who sees other people's success as something to exploit rather than celebrate. You didn't do anything to me in this life. But you tried. And that was enough. Consider this a lesson: some people can see predators coming. And some people bite back. Good luck with your future endeavors. You'll need it." I never heard from him again. Part 8, Building Something Better. But revenge was only part of my second life. The real victory was what I built. Data Vision Analytics became more than just a successful company. I used my platform and resources to create a mentorship program for female founders in tech, fund scholarships for underrepresented students in computer science, establish strict ethical guidelines for AI development that became industry standards, invest in other founders who were being targeted by predatory investors. Sarah's company, Greenthread, became a leader in sustainable fashion. Jenny rose through the ranks to become our CTO. Professor Williams served on our board until her retirement, then wrote a book about ethical leadership using our company as a primary case study. I built the company I'd dreamed of in my first life, but better, because I'd learned what truly mattered. One evening, 10 years after my rebirth, I stood on that same rooftop where Marcus had pushed me to my death in another timeline. But this time, I was here for the company's celebration, surrounded by the team I'd built, the people I'd lifted up, the community I'd created. Sarah found me at the edge, looking out over the city. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, and meant it. Just thinking about how different things could have been. Different how? I smiled. "Let's just say I'm grateful for second chances." She linked her arm through mine. "Well, I'm grateful you chose to trust me, way back at that first orientation. I don't think I ever properly thanked you for believing in me when no one else did." "You would have succeeded anyway," I said. "You just would have had to fight harder." "Maybe. But it's nice not having to fight alone." We stood there together, watching the sun set over the city, a city where I'd once died, and where I'd been reborn into something stronger. Marcus Chen sent me one final email that night. I saw the subject line, "Congratulations on your success." I deleted it without reading. Some chapters deserve to stay closed. Epilogue, 20 years later. I retired from data vision analytics at 50, having built it into one of the most respected companies in the industry. But I didn't stop working. I wrote a book, Second Chances, Building Success Through Resilience and Ethics. It became a bestseller, though no one knew the title's full meaning but me. I funded a foundation that helped victims of business fraud and workplace exploitation. I served on boards, mentored hundreds of founders, and used every bit of influence I'd gained to make the industry better than I'd found it. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered about the cosmic forces that had given me this second chance. Why me? What had I done to deserve it? Then I'd remember, it wasn't about deserving. It was about what you did with the chance you were given. In my first life, I'd been too trusting, too naive, too willing to see the best in people even when they showed me their worst. In my second life, I'd learned to trust wisely, to protect fiercely, and to build something that couldn't be taken away. Chen had thought he could steal my dreams and build his empire on my ruins. Instead, I'd used my pain to build something unshakable, a legacy of integrity, a community of empowered founders, and a life lived on my own terms. That was my revenge. And it was sweeter than any destruction could ever be. The end. Author's note: this story explores themes of rebirth, revenge, and redemption. True success isn't just about defeating your enemies, it's about building something so strong and meaningful that their attacks can't touch it. Claire's real victory wasn't destroying Marcus, but in creating a life and legacy that made his schemes irrelevant. Sometimes the best revenge is building something beautiful that they could never destroy.